Happy New Year, everyone. And as we begin a new year, I am refocusing on my videos for Rural Ireland Matters and ensuring that I will be bringing something every week on rural issues, topical for the time, and with obviously a political slant to them and a current affairs slant to them. This week, of course, we have Nollaig namBan, or Little Christmas as it is also known. And it is a time, I suppose, to recognise the contribution of women to society. And as we are 50% of the population, it is very important that we do this. There's been a lot of debate around it, whether it's something that is unnecessary or whether it is, a celebration. And I think that we need a balance here in terms of how we approach something like a tradition like Nollaig namBan, which did recognise that women did the majority of the work in the home over Christmas. And is this now outdated? As there's more equal sharing of chores and sharing of responsibilities within the home in modern day than there was, or is it an opportunity to highlight issues in relation to women and equality? And this is where I suppose I would recognise, I think anything that addresses inequality and sees it as something that needs to be tackled, I believe is good. We also have International Women's Day in March, which is again another important date. So in terms of Nollaig namBan, in terms of Irish women, and particularly I suppose for my focus is on rural women, there are a number of issues that have been highlighted and continue to be highlighted, particularly in relation to inequality of the sexes. Because, no matter whether you agree or disagree that things like Nollaig namBan or International Women's Day exist, the fact of the matter is that it is well recognised that there is not equality of the sexes in current culture and society, and we as women need to address that and need to and share that responsibility with men as well, because most men do want to see that happen too, in terms of that equality, and recognise the contribution of their mothers, sisters, wives, girlfriends, daughters, aunts, cousins, whatever, to society. And when there isn't equal opportunity, that is something that is bad for all of culture and all of society, because having equality of the sexes, having equal input, and I suppose I would look at it particularly from a political point of view, having equal input of both sexes in decision making and culture and democracy, and how countries are governed and how society is managed, is extremely important, because you get a better government, you get a better society, you get more equality, you get people that are marginalized being included, you get social interaction that is required to meet the needs and provide solutions to issues. It's even proven within the boardroom and within business that businesses who have an equality and purposely look to provide equality of the sexes within decision making within companies do better. Bottom line, in terms of profits, they do better. So it is good. It is good for everyone. And I suppose it is well recognised that rural women in particular end up doing a lot of unpaid work, whether it be within the home, within rural businesses and rural farming. And they do a lot of unrecognised, unpaid work. They're the backbone of many rural businesses and rural farming communities. And this is left unpaid. There's a lot of issues in relation to equality, like, the gender pay gap, which does exist, because there is a lack of continuity there, and provision, particularly in relation to pensions for women who take time out to maybe care for people, whether it be their elderly or their children. So this is something that as a society we need to recognize that great work that people do, that women do, and within a structured work environment, provide that opportunity for them to return to that, recognizing that they took time out to do something good. So they should be rewarded for that. Particularly in the pandemic and during COVID, it would be recognized that women were the majority of the frontline workers. Certainly there was a lot of men on the front line, whether it be in healthcare primarily, which is really where the front line is, if we're to be honest, but also in terms of services that are provided, whether it be in retail or service provision, keeping the country going. There's been a lot of women on that front line, particularly in healthcare, in caring environments. When it came to schooling, it probably was shared to a large degree, but in another degree, it was women that were doing it. And you have to recognise that the majority of single parent families are women. So even though there is quite a lot of men, but the majority, that's the fact, is women. So obviously the parenting, the schooling, all of that during COVID fell in the main to women. So and and obviously as well, the women are more in lower paid jobs, and that is an issue, particularly in rural communities, because the research across Europe is showing that there is a move for women to return to rural areas. They want the quality of life that can bring, but also to give them opportunities in relation to work. And I think that's where COVID, and this is what I've been saying from the start, that COVID provides an opportunity for countries and communities and cultures to look at how we can repopulate rural communities, not just with women, professional women, or women that have experience, but also men, but that they can reinvigorate communities by providing opportunities. And that's where I think online and good broadband and services like that in rural communities can really reignite rural communities and give opportunity, I think, as well to women to have jobs that would necessarily have been in cities in the past, but that there is opportunities everywhere now because of technology. But obviously we need to have that broadband provision, and we need to have that culture within companies that allows people to live wherever they want, have that flexibility. And I think that's another thing that companies are beginning to realize, particularly in light of COVID, and making provision for people to have children at home, to have homeschooling or as a necessary thing, or to have other caring responsibilities. There's not necessarily the 9 to 5 that it is, and we are in a global economy time-wise, that it is about productivity and getting the work done. And that if you can do that in a different time scale as opposed to 9 to 5 and give that flexibility, I think there's opportunities there for women in particular, but it needs to be done in a focused way that can provide more opportunities for women to live in rural communities and have good, high-paying jobs, and can therefore contribute to their local community more because they have the flexibility, they have the opportunities, and they can also share those caring responsibilities. And you would hope that culturally that they are, and it is improving. Men want to be part of the home life and the caring responsibilities as well, so that is giving opportunities there. I mean, from a cultural point of view, unfortunately, when we look at things like domestic violence, in the main, while men do suffer from it as well, the fact is the majority of domestic violence incidents is against women, and that is something as a culture that we need to address. We need education around it, particularly at an early age, and particularly in schools with teenagers. You know, that women have been treated, have been mistreated. With plenty of examples of it. You know, things like domestic violence are a huge concern, and it was highlighted recently that in 9 of our counties in Ireland there is no women and child refuge available, and that's something that unfortunately is still required and still needed. So services like that are vitally important. They call it the silent pandemic during COVID, was the issue around domestic violence, because we did have to spend a lot of time at home. So if things like Nollaig, namBan and International Women's Day can highlight things like that, this is all good, because we need to continue that fight to ensure that culturally that we address violence against women, and that legally and morally we address it, and that there are services there for women who suffer from that and who are subjected to it. And if you're looking from a political point of view as well, they talk about the 5 C's in terms of what prevents women from entering politics. And there's stuff around the convention itself, the culture within political environments, cash, which relates back to the gender pay gap. You know, that there's you know, the cost in terms of political of their getting it, culture around women seeing as part of politics. That's another issue, is the 4th one. And finally, in relation to childcare, which is also an issue, and again, because childcare has primarily been the focus of women, the fact that childcare is expensive in Ireland, is not widely available, is an issue for women primarily. Not just women, but it is particularly an issue for participation of women in politics. That has been proven. We've seen in other countries, particularly the Nordic countries, where childcare is widely available, and it's no coincidence that women's participation in politics is quite high in those countries. So we can see that correlation. So there's the issues that need to be addressed from a society and cultural point of view, and also in relation to politics and women's participation in decision making, which, as I said at the start, I believe by having both sexes, by having a gender balance in society and in government and in what rules us, gives us a better, a more holistic understanding of people's needs, of the services required, of how to serve the people. And ultimately that's what politics is about, is how to serve the people, and how to, that we live in societies that people are happy and free and live their lives to their best potential, and have services available to them. So if you have a government that is more rounded and more understanding and more knowledgeable, by having that balance of gender, I believe, and any marginalised groups within that particular society or country or culture, that ultimately leads to better quality of life for everybody. And that's what we should all be striving for. So I salute all of our wonderful women, because we do have a lot of wonderful women in politics, in community groups, in the arts, in business, in music, in culture, the everyday heroes of mothers and sisters and daughters and grandmothers and aunts and everyone that brings joy to our lives. So we salute women, because ultimately we're not treated equally in society currently, And therefore, we need things like Cumann na mBan, Nollaig na mBan, it's Cumann na mBan, I said, but you know that's another part of our history, to highlight these issues. So happy Nollaig na mBan, everyone, and plenty of men out there that recognise what the contribution of women to our culture and our society as well. So thank you, and see you next week.